What's going on, guys? So I have just recently finished watching Brian Shaw's latest video with Todd Hutchins, where they specifically go through and answer a whole bunch of question and answers from their audience. And one question in particular did seem to grab everybody's attention, and it was surrounding the importance of bicep strength in arm wrestling. Now, obviously, bicep strength does play a role, but most interestingly is that Todd Hutchins really makes the point that he thinks that they are less valuable than most people tend to think. Now, Todd goes on to make mentions of factors like that he's only curled twice in the last 10 years or something like that. And of course, he famously took on and defeated Irakli Zeragashvili to take the 95 kilo world title under the East vs West promotion, where Irakli himself may well be unofficially the world record holder for pound bicep strength in the world, and obviously an elite arm wrestler as well. Todd Hutchins, on the other hand, with a strict curl of only something like 59 kilos or something a lot less than Irakli's, still was able to dominate him on the table. So it does beg the question, is arm wrestling more about something else, or is bicep strength a crucial part of the sport as well? Straight away, when I think about biceps in arm wrestling, I think of people, yes, like Irakli Zeragashvili. I think of people like Ermes Gasparini, who has the unofficial world record in the arm wrestling sense of a 93 kilo bicep single arm cable curl on a single pulley. And he, of course, is largely successful, as is Irakli in all other circumstances outside of Todd Hutchins. Now, styles do make matches. That is always a factor when it comes to arm wrestling. And look, to say that biceps are irrelevant or that biceps are the be-all and end-all really comes down to the style of arm wrestler that you are, the style of arm wrestler that you're facing, and the balance of power that exists between the two of you. So Todd makes mention that you will never see somebody at an arm wrestling tournament icing their bicep. You'll never see someone holding their bicep because it's so pumped. It's always the hand, wrist, and forearm that is most pumped, that is most fatigued. He goes on to say that the bicep in an arm wrestling match is always active, unless you're fully tricep pressing. The bicep is always active, but it's more active in a low intensity, high endurance sort of setting, as opposed to a maximal contraction. Let's see what you can do. But the thing about arm wrestling and bicep strength is this. I agree with Todd that it is not as valuable or as crucial as the hand, wrist, forearm, because a fight can be won first and foremost at the hand and wrist, where you contact your opponent is the most crucial thing. Access to power, or the lack thereof access to power, will be determined first and foremost by fingers and hands, pronation, wrist flexion, those sorts of things. You can even bicep curl a dumbbell, predominantly with your forearm flexors as well, your brachioradialis, common flexors, etc. But ultimately, the bicep is the next step down the chain, and it is still part of what I would consider to be a crucial part of the chain. Now, if all things are even, if the hand and wrist and forearm has not yet been able to determine a winner, if the hand, wrist, and forearm creates a situation where the match is not over, then the bicep really starts to become the determining factor. If biceps are largely equal, then we go further down the chain into the shoulder, into the pec. All those sorts of things start to matter just as much as well. Now, what the bicep does is sets a platform for your hand. Todd was pretty accurate in the way that he said that bicep strength is not used in a hugely active contraction, but more of a static and endurance-based sense. A lot of people talk about endurance in arm wrestling, where what truly happens is often it's not that one person has more endurance than the other, it's that the other person has a greater peak force, and subsequently they are using less effort relative to their maximal contraction. So the higher your maximal contraction on your bicep, the less you need to exert relative to your maximum effort in the match, and the more you can rest and be perceived to have endurance. Also, bicep strength in the setup is what creates that static rise. That, in combination with pronation and in combination with ulnar flexion, I think that's the right movement, ulnar flexion, deviation and flexion, anyway, you know what I mean, wrist rise. In combination with wrist rise, the bicep really is what creates that sense of static pressure. Now, I have certainly seen improvements in my game when I have gone through a series or a season of adding bicep strength. I would say that when it comes to any given arm wrestler, once they start to feel that they are reaching their ceiling, a plateau in their hand, wrist, forearm that they cannot break through, adding more back down the chain through bicep, shoulder, chest, lats, all those sorts of things will increase the potential of your hand. Now, I have someone who has, for the first better part of 10 years of my arm wrestling career, focused purely on hand. I gave very little attention to my bicep, very little attention to the rest of my chain. And yet I got great success in early parts of my arm wrestling career, but I certainly reached a limit. Now, for me to break through that limit, I could continue to pursue hand and wrist, but I truly believe that what will break me through these barriers faster is me adding down the chain. Now, again, I straight away think of people like Devin Larratt, he's an arm wrestler who has gone all the way to at least the world number 2 position in current days, with a ratio of hand and wrist to bicep that is skewed largely towards the hand and wrist. But then you look at people like Aramis Gasparini, he has a ratio much more heavy on bicep. Although his hand and wrist is incredible, his bicep is also incredible. Levan Saginashvili, plenty of bicep. And look, it does ultimately point out the fact that the style of arm wrestler you are will shape the degree in which your bicep matters. If you are a short arm wrestler, if you are not an arm wrestler that has an incredibly long elbow to fingertip, incredibly long hand, then you are going to be more prone to wanting to have bicep strength as part of your game. And although Todd Hutchins may not actively train his bicep in an isolated sense, his bicep is always very much engaged. He is a top roller at the end of the day. His best move, as far as I can see, is when he is engaging back pressure and side pressure through a pronation through the base of his thumb. In order to do that, Todd always stays tight. You very rarely see Todd get opened up this way in any match at all. He will get defeated, sure, by someone superior, but when Todd is in his best lane, he is driving sideways with a strong static elbow. Now, he's developed that strong static elbow through predominantly side pressure training, but even in his side pressure training, he is still increasing always the locking ability of his elbow joint and subsequently his bicep. So yes, the bicep is valuable. Yes, the hand and forearm are more valuable. But at the end of the day, if you put Todd Hutchins against Todd Hutchins, and one of the Todd Hutchins had a slightly stronger bicep than the other, there's no doubt he would get the victory. We have to always assess our own physicality. We have to assess whether or not where our greatest return is. And sometimes our greatest return for pursuing our next match is our hand. Sometimes it's our bicep. Sometimes it's our pec, sometimes it's our shoulder, sometimes it's our pinky finger. Either way, strengthen everything, because strength is never a weakness, and bicep strength will certainly help you at the table.